everyone. My name's Arturia, also known as the Coily Academic, and welcome to my channel. So I wanted to create a series where I interview or talk to different grad students about their experiences with scholarships, fellowships, and funding, their experiences applying to grad school, as well as their experiences while they're in their program. So today I thought we could talk about the application process for the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. So I have a special guest with me.
I'm Shelly. I'm a PhD student at the University of Florida, and I study botany, specifically evolutionary biology with a focus in botany. And I got the NSF GRFP in 2019.
So both of us were awarded the Graduate Research Fellowship. I was awarded it this past March. Just going to start first with talking a little bit more about what the GRFP is, who's eligible, why apply, and funding.
Apply because it funds your graduate program. A lot of graduate programs are funded through either TA-ships or clinical rotation, some form of working to have your program paid for or for you to be paid. But this pays for you and for your program. So who's eligible is U.S. citizens, national and permanent residents. They have that you can have never earned a master's, professional, or bachelor's, master's unless you're returning after 2 years. So you can apply when you're an undergrad and then when you're a graduate student. So I think, Arturia, did you also apply as an undergrad?
Mm-hmm. If you apply as an undergrad, you can apply twice as an undergrad and then one time as a graduate student. But if you don't apply as an undergrad, then you can only apply one time as an undergrad. As a graduate student, either a first year or a second year. So keep that in mind. If you didn't get to apply as an undergrad, you only get one time, either your first or your second year.
So it's $34,000 a year, or $34,000 a year before taxes. And it's $12,000 towards your institution. So that $12,000 sometimes goes to pay for research funding for you. So some of that might go back to you. A lot of times that goes towards health insurance and covers your full tuition or anything that the grad school was currently covering or planned to cover.
And okay, I guess just to gauge the yearly stipend, how much were you making from TA ships or RA ships per year?
So my 9-month stipend was around $20,500. So this is a big increase.
Yes, same. The first year I was making a little bit more because I was funded by the graduate school on assistantship, so it was probably like 21. And then this year it's closer to like 19,000. So yeah, big jump.
If you're funded prior to starting graduate school, a lot of people negotiate with their graduate programs, which I didn't know was a thing, but you should. So those lucky undergrads who get it before going in, you normally find out after you've committed to a graduate program, but even though you've committed, talk to that graduate program and see if the years that you're not funded, seeing as this is only a 3-year funding, will fund you for more for those 2 or 3 years that you're not on the RA ship or the fellowship.
Okay, so I guess now we can talk about the parts of the application. We'll also link the direct link to NSF's website where you can find more information there, as well as other application tip sites. But just for the purpose of this video, we want to kind of go in depth into the different parts. So the first part is your CV, and yeah, your CV updated. You need 3 letters of rec. I used when I was an undergrad, I used any of the professors that I worked with over the summer or during this school term for research. And then when I applied as a graduate student, I used 3 professors in my program, one being my advisor or major professor, and then 2 other professors that I've worked with. What about you? Did you use the same people both times?
So I applied my undergrad year and then my first year of grad school. Well, you waited to second year. So I think that if I waited to second year, I probably would have had three people in my program. I kept the same rec letter writers. As soon as you apply the October of your first year, I wasn't really as connected with my program yet. So my advisors for my graduate program actually had written me a letter during my undergrad year. So it ended up being exactly the same.
And a personal statement, which is around 3 pages, and we'll talk about like the structure of that in a second. Your research statement, which is around 2 pages, and it details a research idea that you have and how you would carry that out and the significance of that project. And then transcripts. So I think both of us submitted our unofficial transcripts, but if that changes in the future, you can also use the official, or if you just have a copy of the official already, you can also use it. And then the application timeline, usually it's due in October, but they're different days based on your field. So just keep in mind that you want to make sure that you have ample enough time to like pass your statements around to your advisor or mentors. So, Shelley, do you want to talk about your personal experience with NSF?
Sure. So, like I said, I applied as an undergrad, and then I also applied my first year as a graduate student. Um, so, my first year applying, I got an honorable mention, and my second year, I got it. I decided to apply out of recommendations of others, and having friends who had received it, I knew that this was a really amazing opportunity. It also opens the door to access computational resources from NSF, NSF Intern, which is an internship program that's pretty new, NSF Grow, which funds research in international countries, and a bunch of other NSF funded opportunities throughout your grad program. So the funding is really awesome, plus all these extra opportunities. So you don't have anything to lose from applying. You can either get told no or, the door gets open. So I decided I would apply. My first year putting together my application was really hard. Um, my original plan was to write it during the summer and, send it to a bunch of people early, and that did not happen. But when uh, at my undergraduate institution, I actually joined writing groups for it. And so one of the undergraduate advisors, he developed this group where two graduate students who had gotten it led the group and helped us kind of think about how we should form our statements and think about the structure of each paragraph or the structure of our research statement, how to be persuasive. And working as a team and a group really helped me get it done and have support. It's a really hard process, and as we talk about the personal statement structure, it's really mentally exhausting to think about how you're going to sell yourself and sell your soul, because a lot of times you're talking about something really really difficult, and how you overcame it. And so I had a really hard time with the application. The personal statement took me the longest. The research statement wasn't as hard, and a lot of people are the opposite. um, I don't know why my personal statement was so hard for me, but they do fund you. So that is what's important here, is like how you sell yourself, and what you choose to share. And I think choosing what to share was hard for me. Um, I guess another thing with my general process is I had a lot of people read it. Um, and sometimes I had them just read a paragraph and make sure, did they like my paragraph structure? Should I continue this paragraph structure throughout? Did they think that this was too the little train who could, or did I fall into a trope too hard with my personal statement? Did it seem just like a crybaby story or something like that? Like, I didn't want to seem not real. I wanted to make sure I was being truly authentic to myself, and so I shared it with a lot of people outside of academia. My sister helped me a lot with it. Um, yeah, it was a process though. And then the second year, once I got the honorable mention, it came with reviews that really helped me. And so those reviews were talking a lot about what's a broader impact and what's intellectual merit. And I focused on those, and that's where I improved my application. And that's exactly what I needed to do, it seemed. Though it is luck and chance, so it isn't there's no right way to write this application or right way to follow between an honorable mention or not getting it even. but I think that getting guidance and reading the reviews and reflecting is really important. What about you?
So, I applied the first time our senior year of undergrad. I was fortunate to have, so I kind of talked about it in my tips to getting into grad school, but I kept the same research mentor going straight into grad school. So, one of the older students in my lab had just got GRFP. So she sent me her um, materials and he told me to like mirror it after that. Like you, I didn't start till like the fall, so I was a little behind. So I mirrored it after hers, and I found it to be more difficult for the research statement just because I hadn't written one before. And that fall was the first time I was doing a lot of academic writing in the first place. So I did that. I did both of the drafts. And then in November, I got an email from NSF that my application was suspended because I didn't follow the formatting. So in the research statement, you're supposed to, of course, like add your citations and where you're getting your theory from and your ideas. And when I was mirroring it after hers, I didn't think about the font size of the references. So I made the references like 8 and they needed to be at least a 10. So that's why it got suspended. So definitely like look at the format look at the format requirements on the website and don't like steer from that at all because you don't want it to get thrown out like that. Are coming from clinical, make sure that your research statement is formed in a way that it has research and intellectual merit, because if they feel that it's too clinical, they will also suspend your application. I've heard of that happening. So just make sure that you follow the guidelines they provide because you don't want to put all that work in and then get it thrown out, especially since I didn't get any. Because of that, I didn't get any feedback that I could use the next time. So then going into grad school, my advisor suggested I just try my second year because at that point, um, I'd like have more research experience on my CV. I'd also like, because like they compare you to others of your same group or your peers. So he felt that it would be better if I just waited a year. So then my second time, again, I like followed the previous students like examples, and I passed it around to my advisor and Shelly, and I did it like I did the research statement multiple times because I was pretty okay with my personal statement just because I've like said the same story over and over as many times, so I was used to it. So I just passed the research statement around probably like 3 4 times, um, and submitted it.
About the first versus second year of grad school. Chose first versus second. So I was advised first year because that whole idea of comparing to your peers. Um, at the time, I think I had 4 publications out, maybe, and my advisor said that I would look better now than I would in like compared to second years who everyone would have time to catch up. So it is like a very personal decision, first versus second, and there I don't think there's a wrong versus a right. It's whatever works for you and your advisor.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, and I'd also say that that if I was able to get an honorable mention the first time, I think we would have felt more comfortable just like making us apply again. But since we were like going into the unknown because I didn't even get any reviews the first time, it just made sense. Um, and also, I think my headspace, I was like ready to be able to like write them because I applied to a lot of smaller fellowships and grants my first year, and so I was getting more used to like selling myself and writing. As far as publications, my first year I had one, like two, one publication. I did the second, like that fall. So it would have been after the actual application process. And then I started a book chapter after my first year. So like I did have more publications, and I also had more like conference presentations too. Um, so yeah, it really is your preference. I would say like just talk to your mentor advisor about it, with your CV and like what you're coming from. So if you applied as an undergrad and you have reviews, you can use that to decide. If you don't, then I would say again, talk to your mentor and then see if you feel like um, you'd be like a better applicant if you waited.
I would still, if you hadn't written it in undergrad, maybe write it that first year, even if you might apply the second year and wait just to get that experience. Like the writing and getting feedback is a lot. And so take the time when you can.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about what an honorable mention is and I guess like the review process as much as you're aware of?
I guess I can as much as I'm aware of it. I mean, so you can go onto like Grad Cafe, which is this like website that people post when they get their reviews back from NSF and for the GRFP and say like how many reviewers they had and what was their rating. Was it fair? Was it excellent? Was it good? Um, I don't remember exactly what my ratings were, but I did have 4 reviewers my last year, and most people only get like 2 or 3. Um, so that was a little odd to me. Um, but I hear that you get more reviewers the more like you move up in the rankings. There's what I know about the review process. I feel like is very conspiracy theory sounding, um, but you get more like a did you meet all the requirements review? Like, did you check all the boxes or are you out? And I think that might actually be even a computer reviewing it rather than a person. Then you get set to panels, and a certain number of panelists will review for a first round, and then you'll get put into a pool of uh, are you an honorable mention or are you given it, basically. And so then as a group, I think they meet to go through those and decide. Um, and a lot of people who get honorable mentions will get like end up getting it or end up getting another honorable mention. It's very random. Someone in my lab got 2 honorable mentions, and that to me is like scary
I
in a
did
way because
that. I thought, I guess 'cause, like you're always told, like if you get an honorable mention, like that's good. Like obviously for you the next time you apply, but never mind.
yeah, I don't think it influences the next time you apply. I think it just they look at your application as like a snapshot that one time. Um, it does give you access to their computing resources, so that's nice. And it's nice to put in your CV. It is very honorable to be mentioned from NSF. I mean, there's so many applications that to be even considered or to be seen as like a good application was really awesome.
Or do you want to talk about your like general tips for your personal statement, research statement? I know that we have, I mean, the structure is pretty much the same, but we did have like different topics because we're coming from different areas. So I guess you could just talk about the structure of the personal statement and then your general tips.
Yeah, so the structure is I started with personal background and why I'm interested in science, what keeps me excited. Um, this personal background section differs for individuals. And so looking at a lot of NSF GRFP applications can help you kind of figure out what you might want to write about. I then wrote about my research experiences, each individual one, and I kept these structured a certain way where I would say, okay, who, what, when, what did I do, what did I learn, what was the outcome. Um, and then I went on to my current directions. So, where am I now and what am I doing? The outreach that I'm currently invested in and what I'm really passionate about. I wouldn't write here about like, you once helped out with this booth. This is like things that you really do care about that, help you feel like you're giving back or help you feel motivated and excited to keep going. And then I wrote about my academic and career goals. Um, so the one thing I would say is if you write about something that like is negative or something that's like, uh, you know, a struggle you've had in your life, you should go full circle. How are you going to give back to people who are also struggling? Um, yeah. And that was a hard one to write. Why the personal statement was so hard for me is that writing about personal in a not too here's my like sob story way is a very hard thing to do. What about you, Arteria? What did you write about?
So, um, I guess like this obviously the same structure, but I started with like how I got into IO similarly. Um, I found out pretty late, so not like late, like, but later than some people when they went into science. So talked about like I wanted to be a lawyer, but that changed. But I still want to like be able to contribute to my community like through employment law, but through science. And then I did the same thing where I just talked about each research experience with like a who, what, when, really kind of short because I had, but at that point I had like a lot more than I did when I was an undergrad. Um, and then for current directions, I tried to like make sure I was discussing impact for both science and practice given my fields, like for the workplace and things like that. And then similarly with outreach, I circled back. So I talked about my experiences like coming from a more non-traditional household, like being raised by my grandparents, um, like things that I experienced in my family, especially with my granddad being the sole income earner and like seeing what it's like for the working class and like how I want to give back in that way with my research, but also how I want to give back to like students that were in my position. And so by that point, I also am glad that I waited because at that point I had started going back to my high school to teach them like R and talk to them about college and grad school. And that's something I was passionate about. So I just integrated mentorship and community outreach for underrepresented and marginalized groups into my statement. And that's what I spent the most time on in outreach as opposed to like random things.
Yeah, I think that outreach is hard to decide on when you're just starting at a new school or you just moved or you're thinking about a program that's maybe not in the exact location you are coming from. Um, I looked up like a bunch of things at UF when I wasn't here yet, and it's like, oh, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll be involved in this. And it's interesting how it's changed too, and how you find other ways to get back to the same cause. So I think having like a centralized cause that you really do care about, that you really are passionate about, is really important, and a plan, an action plan where you can actually like do something for that. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Do we want to talk about the research statement?
Oh, and one more thing for the personal statement, Shelley kind of already touched on that. I just want to reiterate that they're funding the person. So like make sure that even though it might feel like, oh, like I should just care about my research statement, really do take the time to um like paint your story or narrative where they'd want to like invest in you as a person. But yeah, onto the research statement. So um, you start with the general background of your research um, idea or project, the goal of that. Um, Shelly can like talk about her structure because I think it's a little different. So first, the background, the goal, and then I went into theory. So what theory um, is framing my hypotheses. So then I went into my hypotheses and I tried to make them short because we only get 2 pages. And then I went into the general framework of how the study would be conducted. So who would the participants be? How would I analyze my data? That was like a sentence. Where would I like if it would be like archival, already collected data, or if I would again like conduct an experiment, um, and then intellectual merit and broader impact. So what are the implications of that study?
So mine was a little different. So I talked about the background and went into a centralized goal, and then I broke that goal down into two aims. And then I went into what are my methods to address these two aims, um, and the expectations I had based on prior research that I did. I also then went into intellectual merit, which I talked about databases that I would deposit my research in and ways that I would disseminate my research to the broader scientific community. And then for broader impacts, I talked about ways that I could incorporate this into undergraduate curriculum, into undergraduate research experiences, along with community uh, research or community involvement, I think. It's hard because this is a two-pager, so it's really hard to mush it together. I think the biggest thing you have to think about, though, while you're making this research statement is that you don't have to do it. And I am not doing my research statement that I got funded at all. I realized after I submitted that it was actually really unfeasible. That's good. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, my reviewers, I think I got like three, two or three. Um, they, yeah, I got like a mix of excellent and whatever the one underneath is, got very good, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So their concern was the research statement because um, I was currently conducting the study, so like I still am conducting it because it's taking a long time. But um, they didn't like that I didn't say in more detail how I was going to carry out the study, and I made it short because of the page limit. And so they would have liked me to go more in depth as to like how I would carry out the study. So it really just depends, I guess, on what who your reviewers are going to be, and your reviewers are like people or scholars in your field. So think about like what they would probably look at the most. So of course, they looked at intellectual merit and broader impacts, but they did want to know more about okay, these are your hypotheses. How are you going to test these specific hypotheses? So yeah, just keep that in mind for whatever field you're applying for. To think about like what reviewers are looking for in that statement. Other tips or things you thought were important?
There's really no reason not to apply if you're eligible. Even if you have a low GPA, you should still try to apply. Um, I did not have a beautiful GPA, and every reviewer noted it for both 2 years, but that didn't prevent me from getting an honorable mention or getting it. So don't let that prevent you from reaching out and trying. Um, yeah, and there's lots of resources with application examples that you can read and that you can sit with, and there's lots of people who will look at yours. I believe there's like a Twitter database that was just put together of people who are willing to look at graduate applications. It included people who wanted to look at NSF, so I'll include that link.
That's really cool.
Just make sure that you don't stop yourself and definitely try if you can, if you're eligible.
I'll also try to put some other fellowships that I applied for during my first year, like before then, even though I didn't get them or anything, because like again, they're really competitive. They really helped me like be able to like keep trying, especially if we're going into academia. Oftentimes, you hear a lot more no's than yeses anyway, and so just getting into the mindset of I'm going to try. I think my work is good, and um, I think that it has a real contribution. So I'm just going to keep trying. I think that's really good to have, especially like earlier in your career. So I applied to the Southern um, Southern Education Research Board, or I always get them mixed up, but it's for grad students from underrepresented backgrounds interested in faculty positions, especially in the coming from institutions in the South. So I'll put that down there in the description box, as well as like any other fellowships. Oh, the Ford Fellowship, people apply to that too. Um, so I'll put those also down in the description box. They're also pretty comparable to NSF as far as funding, though I think NSF gives more. Segment is like once you're awarded NSF. So we already touched on this, but you're funded for 3 years. If you're going straight into grad school when you find out, then you're gonna have to have two. There's gonna be 2 years you're not funded on NSF, so you can choose to put funds on reserve until your last 3 years, or like figure out how you want to alternate that. Shelly can talk more about that on how why you chose to put your funds on reserve and how you made that decision.
Yeah, so I'm on a research assistantship, and I have been for my first year and now in my second year. I got the GRFP during my first year and decided that I wouldn't finish my research assistantship project by the end of my first year. I needed to work on it during my second year, so I thought that it would be best if I stayed on the RA ship. My program also requires me to TA for 2 semesters during my graduate program, so I RA'd my the first semester on the GRFP, so my second year's fall, and I technically TA'd my second semester of my uh, year. So that helped me meet the requirements. I still have to do one more semester of TAing, but at least, I finished this RA project and I could still TA and I could meet with the requirements of my program and put this on the reserve so that I can now spend the next 3 years really just focusing on my research.
Can you talk a little bit about what you have to do each year while you're on reserve or anything that you have to like any documentation you have to fill out?
So when you get the GRFP, you have to declare, and so you can declare on reserve. So that's what I did my first year, and then a year later, you have to fill out your yearly activity report. So I did that pretty recently, and it was interesting because I was like, what do I include when you're not funded by NSF for the year? You should still include almost everything you did, things related to your professional development and your academic development or research. So you write this small little report up about that. And there's some activity report examples online when you Google it. Um, but I actually asked one of my friends here who did the same thing, who put herself on reserve for a year, to send me her activity report, and I kind of followed that. And what she ended up doing was NSF asked you all these questions like, did you take any courses? Did you go to any conferences? Did you participate in any international activities? Did you get any grants? Did you write any papers? Do you have any presentations? And you actually just put that in Word format. Like you just write a paragraph about those. And that's your activity report. So you answer these questions and then you put it in a paragraph form and you submit it, and that's all. You don't have to do anything specific. My school didn't even contact me, the graduate program, to talk about the GRFP yet because I won't start it till fall. But what I know so far is that my health insurance will change in fall, that I should put about 4,000 aside for taxes, but no one will tell you specifics for GRFP taxes. NSF does not either because I think because it's like state related or it's federal, so they can't, recommend how you do your taxes. But your graduate program should, or your graduate school should help you, and if not, talk to other students. Other students have been going through this.
I think that is all that we have. So yeah, if you have any questions for me or Shelly, just leave them down in the comment section. Also, if you're a current graduate student who has NSF, you could also like respond in the comments talking about your experiences or any other tips that you have. And we'll also be sure to link all of the resources that we have for applying for NSF as well as other common fellowships in the description box.